Ain't nothing worse than a smart dumb.
Hey yo! Hey yo! Hey yo! Hey
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Smart Dumb Podcast. Always thank y'all for tuning in. Looking forward to this conversation. Shout out the power of Instagram threads. They're not about to get a whole bunch of endorsements from me, but I will give credit where credit is due. I was out here saying, hey, I'm happy to find more podcast guests. And I happened to come across a post from somebody that was saying, hey, I'm looking to be a podcast guest. I think you were first, and then I responded, but and there's a better chicken or egg. What we have is two people to where, it made sense to provide, to provide the other side of the conversation. And so we figured out schedules, and here we are. So I am joined today by Blake, who is, among other things, an author of two books. So somebody who just now, 1 month ago, released one poetry book. You have all the respect in the world from me, because that was not an easy process for me. So I know it couldn't have been the same. So let me take a step back and let me let you introduce, a few things about yourself to get this started. First of all, welcome, and then let me give you that floor.
Thank you. It's funny because I actually have had, like, to your poetry book, I've actually had a poetry book sitting in like the back of my mind for a really long time. It was the thing that I wanted to release first a very long time ago, and it just never happened. It all felt, I don't know, poetry books are so personal. And you can't like hide behind things. But yes, my name is Blake. The author name is Blake Gabrielle. I have two books out right now. My first book is called Olympic War, and it is a dystopian rom venture. And for those of you who don't know what rom venture is, because by the way, I created that term in my brain. I don't know if someone else did, but I just coined it. But it's like a romance and adventure novel kind of together. That one is my baby. I am so proud of her. She has taught me so much. And then
I'm sorry, let me stop you even right there. What about the people that don't know what dystopian is?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. Dystopian is, trying to find out. It's a subgenre in science fiction, and it's often kind of like a future, a setting that's set in the future, and they often just describe or depict what life would be like, or what life would be like how the author imagines it. Usually often in these, the world has been destroyed or become desolate for some reason or another. Famous dystopian things are like Ready Player One, Hunger Games, Divergent, even I Am Legend will be considered similar to dystopian type of books. But basically they depict kind of what the author would imagine the world would be like if some big catastrophe happened, and how that would affect everything else.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, excellent.
That I tried to do it the best that I could.
No.
But yes, so my first book, she's my baby, she's taught me so much. And then my second book that just came out a little over a month ago, which is Carry Me Home. And that book is like a magical realism romantasy, and romantasies are just like fantasy romances, and also in the romance genre, not the romance, in the fantasy genre, which sci-fi fantasy tend to merge a lot. In the fantasy genre, magical realisms are more, there's like fantasy, there's deep fantasy. So like deep fantasies will be like your Star Wars and your Star Treks and your Lord of the Rings and kind of Harry Potter. And then you have like fantasies, and then like a magical realism is how the author sees it if magic really truly existed in everyday life. So famous books would be like Practical Magic. Practical Magics are pretty good. If you've ever seen that of a magical realism, they live in the real world. They exist in the real world. Charmed would be another like magical realism. They live in the real world. They have powers and they interact in a way where they kind of have to hide them. Or like everything's around us, but unless you have the vision. And so that's what a magical realism is. So Carry Me Home is a magical realism, romantasy, and that one is a real passion piece. I it's probably more of my writing style than I would say Olympic War is, but it is a book that kind of came to me when my mom got diagnosed with cancer earlier this year. And it's kind of like a love note to mothers and to daughters and to struggle and just magic and being able to find your magic. And Carry Me Home, it's about a fire witch who didn't know that she had powers until later on in her life, and
Mm.
most of her family doesn't know that they do. And when her mother gets diagnosed with cancer, she goes along that journey with her. But in the beginning of the book, you find out that her mother is like dying. There's nothing else that they can do. And so the daughter is trying to find a way to use magic to save her. And from what she gathered, is that she has to get her mother to have like the sight, which is be able to see and believe in magic. And once she does that, she can heal her mother. So Carry Me Home is a journey about taking her mother back home to where her mother was from and trying to take her to all these sites where magical people or things happen to so her mother can see it so she can try to save her.
Okay. All right. All right. Wow. That's very impressive. You said that the second book, Carry Me Home, like creation to release probably took, it didn't take long, it seems.
No, I set it happened it happened really quickly. I had a job, like a regular, normal people job at a credit union, and I decided to leave the credit union because it just wasn't my space anymore.
Mhm.
I kind of started coming into myself last year and this year, and I was like, okay, I know who I am, I know where I want to be. And so I left the credit union, and I was in the process of Olympic War is a 4 series book.
Mhm.
So I was in the process of the second one is written, the third one I'm writing, and I didn't want to take too much time or like escape from that world too much. So I told myself, okay, I'll give you a week to like not focus on Olympic War, to get out of that series mindset and to just be in this book. So I actually wrote Carry Me Home in a week. And from that time, I think published it in 3 months.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
That was crazy.
Yeah. 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 That's okay. But like that was so two, no, no, three of the series books were finished, and then like not never mind if it was released, they were like content was created, and then this one
Mhm.
was so it's like at this point you're just seasoned. I mean, after one book, you're it's I don't that's why like after one book is because none of these things happen quickly. You know what I mean? So it's like
No.
yeah, the process of even once we learn so much putting together, and I mean, from everybody, I guess that's why everybody does their specialty. I mean, like me thinking of the concept of telling a whole story like that, it just seems, seems out there. Like this book was 40 distinct stories that were no longer than 3 pages. You are writing, a front to back, beginning to end, story. So it's like, yeah, those are different beasts. I should have jumped. Should have put this in already. My version of the when we think of when you talk about dystopian and people, with powers living among the normal. I'm listening. I'm watching Supercell right now,
Mhm.
and so that's definitely one of
Mhm.
those cases. So yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's fun. Can we even step back some? Like, what was it? Actually, let me try to ask a connecting question. How much of you
Mhm.
is in Carry Me Home?
I would say it's funny because I think that as writers in general, there's this quote from a TV show, I think it's Bones, and they talk about how you can tell more about the author in any book than you can tell about the characters or anything else. In Olympic War, I think there's a lot of there's bits and pieces of me in there, but I Carry Me Home, there's so much of me in it that it's scary. It's really personal. I have very few people who I let read my books before they come out,
Mm,
just because I grew up in the time where like best friends were betraying authors and like posting their like chapters online, and that's I'm obviously nowhere near at that caliber, but I like to keep that practice now.
yeah.
But my friend, he read the book, and he when he finished it, he messaged me. He was like, "Are you okay?"
Mm.
And I was like, "Yeah, I, I think I think I'm good." He was like, "I just wanted to check in on you after finishing this book," and I was like, "Okay, yeah, I think I'm good." But it has. I always tell people that it's really, really loosely based off of me and my mother,
Right.
our relationship. It definitely has a lot of. I'm the kind of person where if somebody that I care about, somebody that I love is going through something,
Mhm,
I'm probably going to do like whatever to help them.
mhm,
It's not necessarily the healthiest thing, and that's something that gets explored through the story. Is how healthy is it to sacrifice who you are and give up who you are to try to save somebody else, and when do you call it quits and when do you say it stop? Those are one of the things. I wanted to also, to me, in a lot of books that have like someone that's dying from cancer or, whatever, they kind of make the cancer patient like a saint.
mhm,
And in both of my books, I try really hard to make every single character that I write about dynamic.
mhm,
I try to make them complex. And so in this story, I wanted to try to not only depict like what it is for the daughter to, have these hopes and dreams of saving the mother, but what it is for like the mother to have her own sets of desires, and for their relationship to be complicated because the mother and her daughter relationship isn't easy on
right,
either side.
right.
And so that was really important for me as well. But yeah, there's so much of me in this book. That since it's been like when Olympic War was published, I went instantly and I read it, and then I cringed because I've done everything. So I do the cover design, I do the editing, even though grammar is not my forte. Like from start to finish, I've done everything so far, just
Mm,
out of necessity.
mhm.
Um, when Olympic War came out, I read it and cringed at all like the grammatical errors, and I was like, oh my gosh. But I have not, since Carry Me Home has been published, I haven't read it again,
Mm,
which is
okay.
very unlike me. And it's not because I love the story. I just really don't want to be in that headspace that's in the book sometimes because it
Okay.
is so much like myself.
Okay. Okay. And would you say, is it on the Easter egg side where somebody that truly knows you sees like connect, or is it fairly obvious? Like, okay, first of all, I'm sorry, let me step back there. Did you intend, like, is this it's not an autobiography, but do you intend for it to be like, I'm doing this so that y'all can see some of me, or it was more subtle and people that know you are like, oh, okay, I can see the connection, if that makes sense?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
The book is set in St. Thomas, which is
Okay.
the shirt that I'm wearing, ironically today. Because my mom was born and raised in St. Thomas. So we are Afro West Indian, Afro Caribbean.
Yeah.
And so that part is obviously not subtle. That's a blinking red thing. Is one of the things my mom has always told me, like, if it's my time, I just want to go back home.
Hmm.
And then there are things that I think that are a little bit more subtle. Um, that unless you really, I would like to think that I integrated it deeply into the character's personality.
Hmm.
Um, so unless you really, really know me, then you wouldn't get it. One of them being kind of the main character's relationship with like her best friend that she has on Island. It's so similar to friendships that I've had, but
Okay.
I don't know if anybody would get that unless they've ever been like privy to be able to see how I interact with specific people in my life.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit of both.
Okay. 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 So, all right. So then what is it, relevant or that you care to share about just in general with both books? What is it about, your upbringing, how you were raised, where you were raised, what your, interests are that has led you to become a multi published author?
Um, it's weird because I've been kind of a creative my whole life.
Hmm.
Um, I've been reading books since I can remember.
Hmm.
I've always loved books. I think I wrote my first. I love books. I love creating. I actually went to a school to an art school in Detroit called Detroit School of Arts. And I went there for radio and television production because I thought that I was gonna pop up on a scene and I was gonna do directing and editing. I've never been very big on being in front of a screen.
Hmm.
It's just not, it's never been my vibe. So I always wanted to do directing and editing, but before that, I think I wrote like my first script, or like my first take in a script when I was in the fifth grade,
Okay.
or like fourth grade going into fifth grade. I remember it was like a summer, and me and my best friend actually like rehearsed it a little bit and practiced it, and then So Gone by Monica was supposed to be like playing, and we had like we like rehearsed dance routines, so which is terrible because she was such a great dancer and I'm not at all. So
Right.
embarrassing. But from there, I kind of started and stopped a lot of things.
Hmm.
Um, I have this story that maybe one day I'll go back to. I don't know if I ever will, but it was Call Her Name, and it was kind of a story where this girl had powers and she could read your thoughts if you said her name or something like that. And there are other stories that I kind of started and I never had the ability to finish one. I've even had a couple of fan fictions. I think I started really writing probably like seriously when I was in like the ninth or 10th grade. And I started really using that as an outlet to express myself in my
Hmm.
life. There's been a lot of hardships and struggles and a lot of things that I've kind of gone through. And for me, books have always been like an escape. So if like any no, my mom used to threaten to take books away from me because that's how nerdy I was. Because that's what I needed, right? Like I needed a book because it lives in your head, but also lives on a page, and that you completely forget that the outside world is around you.
Right.
And so I started really writing heavily in high school and fan fictions, which are so cringe. I found one and I was like, oh God, I can't believe that I ever wrote this. This is terrible. And I wrote it for like my best friend
Hmm.
because we were obsessed with Twilight, which is just, it tells you how cringe it is.
One
Um, we're,
great franchise. It's
we
okay. All right.
we were obsessed with Twilight and she loved Jacob. And so I took um this story of basically when Jacob like runs away in the third book and he like runs to these two like witches because I've always loved magic. Magic has always been my thing. I think that if I ever write about anything forever and ever, it's probably going to be magic.
Yeah.
And so like that was the first one that I had in completion. And honestly, that one, if if anything ever in my life had most of my pain and struggle, it was probably that terrible fan fiction. Because at the time I had a boyfriend, and then in the process of me writing the fan fiction, I started to find out that he was cheating on me in
Oh,
high school, right? And like, how do you express that? And then like that led into the fan fiction, and it got really wild. But I don't know. People ask me all the time. I think that it's a part of it is a way for me to express myself. I've always had a hard time doing that, and I often didn't feel safe being able to say how I feel or things like that. And for me, writing was like a safe space to do it. And so it kind of just led into everything. And that's why in like the books that I publish, it's they're very big statements of kind of how I see the world, um, and how I view certain things. So like an Olympic War, it's in the beginning it's very similar to Hunger Games, but it's funny because the Hunger Games is very similar to a statement I used to make, which was that I would never join the military, which jokes on me, I'm in the Navy Reserve, so never say to anything. Um, but I always say I would never join unless my brother joined because I'm so protective of him, especially when I was younger. And then that story kind of always lived in my head.
Hmm.
And then Hunger Games came out, and I was like, oh, this is very similar. And so with Olympic War, it kind of takes, at least in the beginning, that concept and the Hunger Games a little bit and it merges them. And it really talks about, both of the books to me are about like sacrifice. I think that is something that's common in my life, as an expression, and both of them are really like found families, and they have all kinds of different like comments on love, and not just like romantic love, but platonic love and familial love, and like how far would you go for it. And I think that everything that I've experienced in my life kind of pushed me into this writing. um but yeah, it's a journey. Writing isn't easy.
No.
um I've I just now am in like a really bad like editing block in my mind,
Okay.
and I hate them. But it's hard because I think that when I started actually being able to write full stories is when I really felt like I had something to say.
Hmm. Interesting, interesting. And even you said a while ago, I'm so glad you said that, like books are your escape, books are your release. And there really is a gift when someone just with words on a page can be so descriptive that you are really have now mentally put yourself into it. You have set the background or the room, or you know what I mean, you put people's characters. I wish that would be an interesting exercise if like somebody would, one of those descriptive stories, and like people, however, the great artists or terrible artists would be like, what does this person look like to you? I mean,
Mhm.
like that would be a fascinating exercise. I also was thinking about Kendrick. Stop playing with me till I, make you in a song or put you in a song, and you're like, okay, yeah, you over here cheating with me while I'm writing this book. Like,
I mean, I can't confirm or deny that in Carry Me Home, there is someone who did me dirty when I was in St. Thomas that might have made their way into the book.
yes,
Um, and to me, it's not like a toxic or a whatever way. It's a way of like poking fun sometimes.
right, right.
A situation that just seems so ludicrous and like crazy. And that's kind of what I do sometimes. And also even in Olympic War, there is my character. She's not the main character, she's one of the prominent ones. And she is kind of similar to some like a combination of friendships that I have. And
Mhm.
like I said, I try my very best to make my characters very complex. And so her name is Agate, and she is kind of reminiscent of like when you have a friend and like you guys are so close, and then one thing that you've done that friend feels like is a betrayal, or hurts them or does something, and then they become a completely different person overnight.
That's relatable.
Yeah. And so that one, it's and that's what I love about Olympic War. And it's hard because it continues on through Olympic War, and the next book that's coming out is Phoenix War. And even like the mention of like mental health and mental illness. So it in the book they talk about how Agate is diagnosed with like borderline personality disorder. and that's why some of the actions that she had just kind of flipped on a dime. But that is reminiscent of some of the toxic friendships that I've had where like everything was good when I was um sorry, the TikTok demore keeps coming in my head. But when I was more passive and I wasn't like in everybody's face and I was the background character, like everything between me and that friend was good.
Right.
And then as soon as I became like a foreground person, everything flips.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that is explored, through the book. And how loyal do you remain to people like that?
Right. Right. And,
Do you keep
and
loyal or do you-
right. And if I could now, even the name Agate, like what? Hopefully, this spoiler free. But like, what? How did you like? You're writing this story. Like, this is the name. Like, what? Just yeah.
Um, so the funny thing about like naming characters to me is so hard.
Yeah.
Um, and originally all of my characters had different names, but then I decided somehow in Olympic War that I want all of them to have to be named after crystals.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah.
So
Fascinating.
almost every character in Olympic War is named after crystals.
Okay.
And so the main character, her name is Moonstone, and her brother is Jet, and they're twins. So that was purposeful because Moonstone's like a white crystal and Jet's like a black crystal.
Okay.
And they're like together, but they're opposites. Um, for Agate, I don't know. I think that it just felt I tried out a couple different crystals. My best friend always jokes with me, and she's like, "You just love gender ambiguous names." I do. I love gender ambiguous names. But it felt like agate as a crystal is supposed to be like grounding and very kind of like neutral, and she's not that, but she presents as that.
Mhm.
And so for me, it felt kind of like an oxymoron, or like a play on words, where it's like, oh, you think in the beginning that she's this awesome friend and she's this person that Moonstone looks up to, and in the beginning, when everything is happening and she's there to protect her brother, that you're like, oh, this is going to be good, and the name kind of fits, and then as you continue the story, everything's switched. You're like, whoa. And I kind of hope that that helps with the understanding of like the character flip and how just off-putting it really is for like the main character, and potentially people who read the books as well, and the realization that there are people in our lives that present one way, but that's not really who they are. They're just being that one way because they want to get something out of us or from us.
Mm, yeah. Powerful. 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 Now, as far as you know, your propensity to gender neutral names, is that an extension of like appreciating yours, or being, accepting yours, or what would you?
um well, the joke is that it's Blake technically is not my government name,
Okay.
although I've looked into changing it. Blake is actually my mother's maiden name.
Okay.
um I don't know when I had this love for gender neutral names, but I think it came around the time that I began to be more conscious of the way the world sees like masculine versus feminine, and how just like in a name that can change how someone sees you or treats you or whatever.
Yes.
Um, and names are so powerful. And I think that's why I absolutely hate my government name. Because it never feels like it fits me. And it often when people meet me, they're like, and they know like my government name, they're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I thought you were going to be like so stuck up and so this way. And that's a connotation that comes with my
Everything. Yeah.
name. And then I'm like, and I met you and you're not that way at all. I'm like, I'm so confused in how you could ever think that I would be this way. But that's because names are so powerful, and it's like a thing that calls an energy to you. And there's something about just having where you just don't know, right? Like you don't know if it's a man or if it's a woman, or if it's, whatever however that person I choose to identify, you really truly don't know. And so the way that you respond to them is very neutral.
Right. Okay. Okay. Okay.
And there was something about that I like. And it just there's something just about like the guesswork in it. Like it's funny, right? Like you just don't know. You
Right.
walk into a room and people are gonna be saying like, oh well, I was just reading It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us just because I read it before and then a movie came out and
Mhm.
the name Emerson and it's gender ambiguous. It could be girl or, boy. And like the idea of like Emerson's coming for like a job interview. They're like, oh wait, but is that a girl or is it a boy or who, it really doesn't matter. And when somebody sees it on paper, they stop seeing you as one way and they just kind of see you.
Hmm. Okay. Or they assume.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Right. And just to
probably,
be
but
shocked.
even then that's fun,
Right.
right? Even then that's fun. Is even like with either my chosen name or my government name or my nickname, people usually can tell, but like with my government name, they can tell my gender, but they can't tell my ethnicity.
Yeah.
And so it's fun for me to walk into a room and sometimes see like their face.
Right. Like, right.
Like,
Right. Right.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I enjoy that because even though they're kind of taken aback because they had like their own preconceived notion of who you were, they still somewhere in the psychology of their brain, they still kind of hold on to it. So like they see you and they know that you're different, but they still hold on to that and they might even view you sadly in a more positive light just because of their own assumptions.
Mm.
But it's fun to watch people's assumptions shatter. I don't know if
Right.
that's mean, but
No,
it is
no,
fun.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's a graceful way to go about it. It's like, okay, it's not what I thought it was. So, okay, let's open the door. All right, let me find out who you are. And then there's yeah, just my assumptions, and a lot of them were towards the negative, and I'm either holding on to it. Again,
Mhm.
isn't that cognitive dissonance? It's like, okay, I've been corrected, but nah, I'm not.
Like how
I'm,
my brain and what my eyes are seeing aren't
right.
connecting. Yeah.
But I'm not letting it go though. Like I still feel like somehow it's still 1 + 1 is still 4, even though I'm looking and it's not. The immediate, like this whole story. I mean, this whole topic. The very first person I thought of
Mhm.
was that Olympian. She's not American, and I'm pretty sure she's white, but her name is Moesha.
Mhm.
And it was exactly that. We seen it. Yeah, it was. I think she medaled or something, or she just was. She was in the race, so they went, and they're like, yeah, we see the face, we see Moesha, and people. That's the other problem is networks mess up. They don't match the name to faces anyway, so people were still probably like, that ain't who
Like
is
that's
this really?
not her. And
Who is this really?
the funny thing is that we sometimes think like our name, like yeah, sadly there are some very like commonly African American Black names, right? But then we also forget that some of the names that we have in like the US that we attribute to a race actually comes from like an entirely different culture.
Mm, okay, right,
And we forget that like it could be like, way, way, way left and we don't even know because we're just assuming, oh, you guys use this name or got it from somewhere. And it's funny because it could have like a completely different meaning in a different country and a different
right.
culture.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, my, my to your point, my government name is Jermel,
Mhm.
and there's a guy in the federal, he's like prominent. His name is Jerome Powell, white, and that's what it's funny. Like, historically we've been like, okay, they look white, but they might have had, some African, like immediate African, like I do believe where we all originally came from, but like 2 generations, but they were white passing, but that might have been one of our presidents or whatever. So I'm just gonna say Jerome Powell looks white. But like it's just we are so fascinated by this like older white man just doing very prominent and important, his role right now, and is like a couple letters away from being me. So or having my name. So I definitely understand exactly. It's a great. I'm so like this is just fun for you to explore this. I'm glad that you've been sending us in this direction. I'm gonna quickly or briefly shift off. You are so into magic.
Mhm.
What is like one premiere, 1 or 2, like if we gave you a power tomorrow, what was it, the Black Solstice? we were looking up at the we were looking up at the moon so we could get our powers. So like, if you got yours, what's
Mhm.
that one that you just like tomorrow? Give me that.
Oh, it's for sure telekinesis.
I feel like it's like you've been.
It's for sure. It's telekinesis all the way.
Yeah.
I would I would probably get something more prophetic. So I'd probably get like power of premonition or something that has more to do with the mind because I'm very cognitive. But what I would want is telekinesis. And I make the joke. I told my mom's best friend, she has like a little daughter, and we hang out sometimes. And I told her, like, sometimes I squint my eyes to see if I can make something move, just to see if like one day it'll happen. But I've always been fascinated with telekinesis. I think it's so cool to be able to move or control something with your mind. There's this clip in Charm, and they're like in the attic, right? And they're all like sitting around cleaning up, but the broom's like moving by itself and like things are putting themselves in a way in a drawer. And I'm like, wouldn't that be amazing if I could wash dishes, but not actually be there washing dishes? Like, wouldn't that
Right,
be so cool?
right.
Well, yes, it's definitely telekinesis.
Yeah.
But secondly, I probably like elementals. I love like the idea of being able to control like fire and water and stuff.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, it was like I've been, I just didn't know, I've been waiting for somebody to ask me. I already got them lined up. I like that.
I have. I've been like, anytime someone asks me, it's like I did like training at the credit union, and that's one of the questions that we have. But because I think you could tell so much from a person by what power they would have.
Mhm.
I think the creepiest one I've ever read was mind control.
Mm-mm.
I was like, do we need to have a
Yeah,
conversation?
yeah, they need to go work for one of the banks because credit unions tend to have a little bit more what is the uh they tend to be like, we're not trying to acquire your wealth at y'all expense. What is that word? Versus like we're working with y'all to get, what we want.
Yeah,
Banks seem to be more predatory.
yeah,
So
banks
yeah,
have a lot of predatory debt. Credit unions, I think the common term is that banks are for profit and credit unions are for people.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's the connotation, 100%. No, that's great. What now the two books. So Olympic
Mm.
War came out when?
So Olympic War came out on my birthday last year, which was
Okay,
December 5th.
okay.
Um,
Talking. Okay, so within 12 months, we got two books, and you got one coming soon and one pretty much finished and in the queue. Wow.
yeah, if I can get my act together in the next couple of months,
Hmm.
Phoenix War will be out again on December 5th.
Okay.
If I can get my act together. I like the idea of like those specific books coming out on my birthday. Um, just because as you get older, birthday celebrations just become meh or whatever. And last year I was like, I really don't want to do anything. I just want to focus on the book. And I think that it's something that when I look back on, even if I think about like a party didn't go well or whatever, hopefully one day I make it big and I can be like, man, that book, dropped on my birthday. And that's the coolest thing ever is to say that I released books on my birthday.
Right.
But yeah, so dropped on December 5th. Hopefully, Phoenix War can drop on December 5th of this year as well.
Okay. All right. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. And then yeah, then Carry Me Home, you said at some point in July. Maybe
It
early
drops
July.
7/7.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you're very intentional with your release dates. Like,
Yeah.
even if, I think it would be great if Phoenix War releases on December 5th, but if it happens to be something else, there will be a very intentional reason for that day.
Yeah. If
Okay.
I'm so close to like the third edit. Grammar editing just is not fun.
Hmm.
I'm not really really good on grammar. So there's like if you go on my TikTok, it's funny. Um because the book community can be really like the indie book community can be really forgiving, but sometimes it can be really hard depending on the person. And so I think in Carry Me Home, I spelt hollow on like in the prologue HALLOW instead of HOLLOW. And mind you, these are like first editions that first came out, and it happens to big publishing
Oh yeah.
companies all the time. There's a first edition Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, because it was philosophers before it was sorcerers. There are like 5 big errors in the book, and one of them is that they mention wand twice. And I always try to like remind myself that just happens. It actually just happened with a author that I really love. Her book just got picked up by a hybrid publishing company, and on one of the last pages, they actually put the wrong character's name. They put a name from a different book.
Okay.
And it was so amazing to see. Like, I'm pretty sure the author felt crappy about it. And, like, I feel bad for her, but that book is going to be worth so much more one day.
Right.
But it was still amazing to see because they mess up. But sorry, went off on a tangent. So someone tries to read my book and doesn't make it past the prologue because of that like typo. And to me, it's like that's not like a huge deal. Like, you didn't even give the story a chance. And so I started making some TikToks just joking about like, hey guys. And even in the acknowledgments of Olympic War, it'll say something like, I've tried painstakingly hard to prevent any of my poor grammatical issues or errors getting into this book. So if they're in this acknowledgement, suck it up.
Right.
And that's what I try to do. Like, even on TikTok, I try to make jokes on it, and just be like, look guys, I'm indie. I can only do so much. I can only catch so much. I use softwares, but they can only do so much, and they can only catch so much. But I just hate, I think that's probably why I'm struggling with this one, is that because I came under fire a little bit recently about grammar, that I'm just like, is there anything that I'm ever going to do to get rid of it? But it's still a fun process. I love, and it's weird because it's the first thing ever in my life that I've loved it from beginning to end.
Nice. Wow. That's powerful to say that. Yeah, This episode of the Smart Dumb Podcast has been brought to you in part by Audacity Magazine. Audacity Magazine and Events has been amplifying young professionals and small businesses for the last 5 years. If that describes you, then I invite you to get an Audacity subscription, aka join the Audacity team. You can enjoy benefits that include 2 events a month, whether virtual or in person in Atlanta, bi-weekly power hours that serve as accountability as well as brainstorming sessions, entry into a WhatsApp group chat of fellow entrepreneurs, free shipping on merch, and a free entry into the fetch list, which, yes, is a nod to Mean Girls, and no, not a reference that I personally understood. The fetch list is, however, a directory accessible by those who are tapped in with Audacity, which means it can help you find your next customer. Now, I think it's safe to say that 5 years of anything can never be sufficiently covered in one ad. So to learn more, visit audacitymagazine.org. And to inquire about advertising across their different platforms, email audacitymagazineonline@gmail.com. That's Audacity, MAG, online@gmail.com. Yeah, to your point, I knew like hallowed to be that name. ED was, is a biblical reference, but yeah, hallow is a word. So it's like, yeah, the software is going to need to know, like, okay, but that wasn't the right usage. So it's like, people are too. We only do this for the indie, for the local. It's like, I think it's because we, like, people know you, like, you are your brand. And so they go through, because if you look at every, Fortune 100, 500, all they make mistakes all the time, and people do not care. You know what I mean? So it's like, they only care, a lot of them, they care because you let them. So some of that too, taking power, what you're doing is like turning it into comedy and all that, and making light, acknowledging and owning up to it, but also like, y'all not, but listen, if the prologue having a grammatical error turned you off, if I would have fixed that, then page 3 would have had something for you to whine about.
Like
that's not your
the character's name would have pissed you off, or I mean, and there's so many reasons to like DNF, don't finish a book, and everybody has their own, and luckily, most of the community who, like Book Talk or people who read any author's books, they're so forgiving,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're so communicative. And so luckily there's only been like one person, but it was just like it's like strange how people can just like zero in on like an insecurity.
Hmm.
that is that is what happened. And I was so upset for a second. And my mom was like, who cares?
Right.
Like, you're right. Like, I who cares? Because I do all of it myself, I have the ability to go back on that page,
Right.
change it, republish it on
Right.
KDP,
Yeah.
and whoever buys the book next will never even know it existed.
Right.
Like, I have a couple copies here, so whoever gets those copies, they'll get in on the joke now.
Right.
And that's what I tried to do after. I just tried to like Kevin Hart, like laugh at my pain.
Yeah.
Whenever it happens, there's actually like a TikTok that says, "Tell me your favorite grammatical error that I've made in a book." Mine is that with Olympic War, I didn't know, this is my first time publishing it. I didn't know how long it was going to take for me to actually get physical copies.
Mm.
And when you do like your proof copies, it's like 3 days,
Right.
right? So
Right.
in my brain, I'm like, okay, it's going to be 3 days. And in reality, it was like 3 weeks.
Right.
And so I'm
It's right
freaking
now.
out. I'm like the day that they told me that the books were gonna come was like the day of the release party. And I'm like,
Oh.
and by
Oh.
the way, they came right before I walked out the door.
Oh my God.
The
Oh
most nerve-wracking moment in my own entire life.
yeah.
Because people like paid for the book, right?
Right.
Like they paid to get the book signed. But I was rushing before all of that, and I spelt handedly wrong. And when you put it in through like to do a Kindle, like the Kindle version, it'll
Yeah.
actually go through some of it and it'll check like for spelling errors. And there were way more that the program that I'm writing in didn't catch, the editing software that I was using didn't catch. And so I'm like quickly trying to, because I'm looking at the timeline it's giving me, I'm quickly trying to get it. So I click them to like edit every word that says handedly that is spelled wrong. And for some reason, I thought that I typed in the new one, but before that was an error where I spelled 90 wrong. And so I didn't notice that it happened until I got the book. But every time it said handedly in the first copy that got released, it actually says 90.
Oh no.
And it's like I was so upset at it at first, and now to me it is the most hilarious thing ever.
Right.
And with Olympic War, there's still errors and things that people find. And now I just take it as like, oh, okay, thank you. I go
Right.
in, I change it, and then I republish it and I just
Right.
keep moving. But yeah, that's my favorite.
You know what's brilliant on the low, and maybe you already caught this. Now you have editors. You
Yeah.
have made
Yeah.
fans your like, and that's really what this whole process. And it's good that you're saying, okay, you are using software, so you're not like looking at each word. You know what I mean? Because who would you have? Because that's part of the problem. It needs to be a different set of eyes
Hmm.
to look at these things, because we're just gonna like like you're probably it's something as simple as you remember like this is my favorite part of this chapter. So you're like it don't matter how much you're trying to see. Okay, how does this the page on the right look? You're looking at the left page. You're thinking about the left page because you're like this either or it was it's like I'm gonna put in this book anyway. You know what I mean? Type thing. So it's like we're gonna from start to finish. You have so much that you poured into this that it's hard, it's impossible basically to look at it from every single lens that you can look for. So like, yeah, by not shying away from it
Hmm.
and giving people the opportunity to see the story for all that it is, like, yeah, you got some editors, and then again, the people that really like, they see it, they laugh at it, and they catch the whole story still. Like
Yeah.
that's, you know what I mean? Like that's you're finding your tribe by this. So I see why they have these books, these other like self-help books, Do It Scared, and all that type of stuff, because we get
Yeah. Do it
get
scared.
so caught up on perfection. It's like, okay, meanwhile, yeah, your favorite company. I like how I built the podcast, that one that NPR does, because they give you a pretty overall story. Like we always see the end result, the success, but not too much the journey. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I think if there was more production of like, here's my blooper reel along the way. You know what I mean? Like I think that would be very relatable to people as well. So yeah, shout out to you for that, for real, because again, that's part of what it took to release the book. Like
Mhm.
the willingness to, I don't know if are you a perfectionist?
I am.
Okay.
I'm not by it's complicated. I'm so into astrology,
Okay.
and that also kind of goes into my books too, but so I'm not by nature,
Okay.
I'm by
Okay.
nurture. So like I grew up with a perfectionist,
Mm,
which is to me is a beautiful thing because I have perfectionist tendencies,
okay.
but then I have it like I call it like my fuck it tendency where I'm just like I have this tendency, like it has to be perfect, it has to be perfect, and I beat myself up about it so much. But then I get to this place where I'm like, I just don't care.
Right. This is
Um,
enough.
yeah, like and I, it's funny because people always ask me like, how did you get to write a book? How did you get to publish it? I was like I tell people I wish I could tell you like some awesome, amazing, cool story about how I was lying in my bed and I just had this vision, but no, I just did it. And people like they ask me all the time, how did you get the courage to leave your job and you didn't know what was going to happen? Because I didn't, and my life has been kind of crazy and hectic since. Or how did you get to do this? And my response is always, I just did it. Like I woke up one day, said this is what I'm doing, and I just committed.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and for me, that's the most important thing. Is like even with my perfectionist tendencies, is just being like getting to a place like it helps me because I want things to be the best that they can be in
Right.
any aspect of my life, and I think that that is an important trait to have as a person. But then eventually, I'm just like I don't care.
Right.
But that's my favorite part of me when I get to that place. It's like you know what? It's gonna be what it's gonna be.
Right. Right.
And I can only learn from the processes. Each book has taught me different things about the process, about editing, about publishing, about marketing and promoting, and trying to look at them all as like learning experiences, which is hard because I am impatient to like a clinical degree. I want everything immediately all at once. And this process has taught me that like there's steps and there's levels to it.
Mm.
And I have to, it's a journey and the journey can be frustrating. And I'm pretty sure you've gone through like that frustrating part of the journey. And even like with your poetry book being out and you have like these high expectations of, oh, all these people are gonna read it. And I'm so optimistic that way, like all these people are gonna read it and someone's gonna share it on TikTok and then it's just gonna like blow up. And then it doesn't happen, and you're like, crap, what do I
Mm.
do now?
Okay. 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 Okay.
But and so then I'm like, just enjoy the journey
Right.
because one day you're gonna make it, and then that's gonna be like the cool story you get to tell in your TED talk, right?
Exactly. So there you go. There you go. So do you think like it had to along the way is when you have allowed yourself to embrace the journey? Like, do you think you're there now, or were you there, or you've shifted to that?
I don't know if I'll ever fully be there. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I'll ever fully be there. Um, I think that I'm more there with everything that's happened. Like my mother getting her cancer diagnosis was really eye-opening about like the dumb stuff that we care about.
Hmm.
Just really dumb. And I mean, it definitely put me in a really depressive cycle. And I already struggle with like depression, anxiety, and things, but it really put me in a bad spot. And if you read Carry Me Home, that spot is also kind of translated into the book as well. But I stopped caring about so many things in that moment. Like I realized that I just don't have as much control, and it's something that I had been working on for a really long time, and it takes something that just completely, like it hit us immediately. Like, it was instant. It was, oh, I have this lump. Okay, I'm gonna get tested. Okay, I got tested. Now they're looking at it. Oh, wait, it's metastasized. Oh, wait, it's, going here. We're thinking that it's going to be something that we just have to get surgery for.
Right.
Then I go to her appointment with her and the doctor says stage 4, and you're just like, like what?
Wow.
And it happened in an instant. And for me, that is when things are like, oh, holy crap, things could change. Like this year has been so rough. Me and my mom just made a joke how we thought that 2023 was kicking our butt. Oh no. Oh no. 2024 said, hold my purse.
Oh, right.
But I think that it's a journey that it's a healing thing I'm always going to have to do. But I think that it's something that I've gotten better at as I've continued to work, as I've continued to promote my books. I've been, working on, you said something earlier, like you are your brand, and that's a decision that I've tried to make recently with like my social media, is that I'm taking a different approach. So I'm trying to build a brand and not just the books, because now we're in an age where people don't buy books because they like what it's about. They buy
Talk
books
about
because
it.
they like you.
Yes.
And so it's been something that I've been constantly working on, but it is something that I try to remind myself, because it's hard. It's hard because we're humans, we compare. We see someone doing something amazing, we're like, oh, look, this person's book just went,
Right.
bestseller. Like, why can't I get there? And there's two celebrities that they're going to shock you when I tell you why, but they're like my people that I think of right now. The first one is Sabrina Carpenter.
Okay.
I've been following her. I've been following her since she was on Girl Meets World. But I went to her concert a long, long time ago, and it was $5.
Okay.
Now her
Oh, yeah.
nosebleed for her concert like 200,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
She's and I mean, we're talking about, she's had 4 albums out before anybody really cared. Um, and she just kept going. I mean, I'm pretty sure in her mind, she was like, why is, Olivia Rodriguez or all these other people, skyrocketing, and I'm still in this spot. And then all of a sudden, in an instant, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I love Sabrina Carpenter.
Right.
So she's been in my mind a lot. Like, sometimes you gotta slow burn a little.
Yeah.
When you're there, you're able to like find who you are and find your space. And then when you rock it, it'll be way different than if someone else,
Right.
shut up. And then it's Ariana Grande.
Okay.
And Ariana Grande, just simply because like last year she was in all these, scandals,
Right.
and she took a step back from her music, which is risky as
Yeah.
for anybody to take a step back from her music, because she was living her dream. She got a part in Wicked, which she always wanted. She got the part she's always wanted. But everyone's like bashing her and talking bad about her, and she never said a thing. And to me, that's so, like, she never said a thing. And then she comes out this year and she drops an album which everybody loves.
Mm-hmm.
And Wicked's coming out and everybody's raving about it, and she still hasn't really addressed all the comments and concerns. And now you have like people who are on set with her, like, this isn't, coming to her defense and everything like that. But she kept quiet, she remained herself, and she let her work and everything else speak.
Right.
And so those are things that I'm trying to remind myself now. It's like, it's okay to slow burn. You don't always have to respond to everything. You don't always have to fight every fight.
Yeah.
Keep your like eye on what you're working towards, and everything that's meant to be will be.
Yeah. I'm gonna shout out Kev on Stage. I love that podcast. And here's the thing, Dave mentioned it. They're not the first people to mention it, but like the problem with the internet is when you do respond, then people, it's back to what we said. Oh, you care. Oh, this is a soft spot. All right, cool. We about to, you know what I mean? So, yeah, well, we in there. Yeah, we in there. And shout out, to Ariana Grande, I'm sure part of it, one, regardless, she listened, but I'm sure part of it was a team that was like, hey,
Yeah.
like don't do it because there's no win, there's no, so like it's so much more energy, or we can use our energy on better things than to have tried to go back and forth with the internet to convince the internet to be on our side again. I'll just put some work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now look at all the same people like in May, if I search their tweets in May, is back on her, on her female jock strap.
Like, oh my gosh, Ariana's
It's
great.
like I love her.
It's amazing. And
Yeah, it's like
I mean, like, just the epicness of Ariana Grande being able to bring Brandy and Monica back together in a song. Like,
it's
what?
saying something, right? It's saying something, right?
It's so cool. But yeah, it's a thing that I've learned. I've learned a lot through my own life. I used to be my Facebook got hacked recently, which is
Oh,
hilarious. Because it feels like karma. I used to be like a just warrior. Like I just was social media, like a social justice warrior, and I was always like defending everything and defending myself and going off in feminism and LGBT and like all of those things. And a couple years ago, I was like, this, I have to find a better way to do this because this is not protecting like my mental space. And
yes.
I had people make terrible, terrible comments to me saying things like, um, I was talking about Chris Brown and the domestic violence and things like that that he's known for. And someone was like, why don't you just go back to your boyfriend who's beating you? And I was like one, I don't have a boyfriend, but two, if I did and he was abusing me, this is the terrible thing to say. But that was because then I like doubled down, right? And I got more angry and I got more pissed off. And then like this year, some of the same people try to do that thing to me. Like there's old friends who in a comment section decided they were going to discuss how much they hate me, which is just wild because clearly you don't hate me if you're going to spend this amount of time like having a conversation about me in a comment section. And my response to it was simply, hey guys, miss you too, kiss emoji, and then block them. Right? Like you can't even say anything, like you can't even
Right,
get back to me or whatever like block them and like unfollow that like
right,
status or
right,
whatever.
right.
And that to me was so much more powerful than trying to convince them that I was what they're so determined not to see in me. Like, I'm never going to change your mind. If you're determined to think that I'm this person,
Right.
I could be freaking Mother Teresa and it wouldn't matter.
Right. 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 What's the I'm trying to remember and if I paraphrase it, it's like that when two people meet, there's six people present. Each of us as we see ourselves, each of us as the other person sees them, and each of us as we really are. And
Mm-hmm.
then a similar one is that you're not the same. Every single person that looks at you, not okay, not they all have a completely different version, but you're not
They
the
do.
same. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same, the exact same. It is you, but how they view you is not the same person. And it's so fascinating. I can fully relate to that. I am, this, and that for the community, for the poetry community. I'm this and in the church, church family, and I'm an absolute asshole in a couple other people's eyes. Some of that is fully justified by
Yeah. Yeah.
fully
I, I,
justified.
I'm totally okay with being the asshole in people's stories
This is
now.
your story. I love, yeah.
I mean, I am like, it's a
Right,
joke that I always make. Like, I am the most kind, considerate person. I'm so loyal. I'm so loving. Like once you've got me in that space, I'm there. Like there's no going back. But on the flip side is I am an asshole. Like I'm a jerk sometimes. I'm so blunt. I'm so honest. And I don't mean it in a hurtful way, but I am. And there are people who, who see me that way. The joke that I always tell people is like half the people in my life see me as emotional
mhm.
and half the people in my life see me as logical. And I'm both. Well, I view it more as sensitive, but I'm both, right?
Yeah,
I'm a person who responds and lives off of emotion, but I'm also a person who could sit in a room for like an hour straight and just think through
mhm.
a problem.
Yeah,
Um, and there's this, if you follow like astrology, everybody always talks about like their big three, and it's like your sun, your moon, and your ascendant or your rising. And the really interesting thing is that your rising or your ascendant is how people perceive you when they first meet you.
Mm.
And I always tell people that is how you can tell if someone knows you and is really truly meant to be there in your life, or if they just see you,
Mm.
right? So like I'm a Sagittarius sun and I'm a Sagittarius moon, right? So I'm very fiery, but I'm also very cognitive. I'm also thinking constantly. I overthink everything. And when people get to know me, they get to see that side where I'm actually, more grounded and I think through my decisions more, although I can be very impulsive. I still have like thought, but my rising is Cancer. So everyone who sees me as this overly emotional person and all these other things, they're only seeing like the very like face part of me. They've never taken the time to get to know me past that view. And that's helped me out a lot, even to just like discern who's really my friend and who's just kind of in my life because they think it's cool or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. I got you. All right, I'm gonna play a quick game.
Okay.
We're gonna keep this short because I'm asking about me, and this isn't about me. So I don't want you to think too long on this.
Okay.
I am a Leo. I was born August 8th.
Oh, happy
The
Leo
uh,
season.
Thank you, appreciate that. The other two, those other two piece components of astrology, just do I act like this or that as far as rising? I forget what the second one was. Like, do I act like something of that? And just if I do, just let me, because I don't even know them yet, so I'm gonna look them up later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so like, what do I act like as far as other than I was born? When I was born makes me a Leo.
Um, Honestly, I don't know. I try not to. There's so much in astrology. So for instance, your sun sign, the way that I always say it is like it's a painting, right? So like your sun sign's the outline. It's the drawing, it's the outline of who you are as a person. Your moon sign is usually like all the cool little paintings and details that are lay underneath.
Okay.
So those are all like your emotive side. And your rising and your ascendant is kind of like that last final coating
Okay.
painting. Um, I will say like you have grounding energy, which is common in Leos. Leos can present, Leos are they're very fiery. You guys' planet is the sun. You're the only one who has like some astrological signs share planets. You're the only one that has the sun, which is why people always make the joke that Leos want like everything to revolve around them and center of attention.
Mm,
I've found male Leos to be a little bit more laid back and that their energy that energy kind of goes into different areas, but they're also like fixed signs. So Leos have like a very grounding kind of personality to them, but they also do flock to areas where they are put in front of a screen or made to be important or in some type of way.
okay.
You give off really like grounding energy.
Mhm. Okay. 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 Yeah, I might see. Yeah, I wanted because yeah, people, again, the you act like a Leo, so now I'm convinced. Um, yeah, if maybe the comments might say like, what moon do I act like? What rising do I act like? Let's see,
Yeah.
and then and like I said, eventually I'll look it up. Anyway, back to you. So I want to cycle back around to two things I could think of, and then probably I'll wrap this up. The first one is that for whatever reason, and I think it's been a lot of no, it's been in the past too, but this season,
Mhm,
these 5 or 6 episodes I've had so far, there are
mhm.
a lot of people that have some kind of military connection, some kind of way, and it's fast. It's almost like if I ever make like a booking form or a sign up form, and I'm gonna be like, hey, do you what's your military affiliation? Like, it's a requirement. Like, you would think that's what I'm already doing. So, like, what where does Navy Reserves play in any of this artistic journey?
I would say that it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's such a even with like the people that I go to drill with, they look at me, they're like, I would never. When I
Hmm.
train people, they're like, I would never get that from you. And I completely understand. I don't give off that energy at all. I think that for me, it was about survival.
Mm,
And I had reached a place in my life where I've been on my own in one way or another since like 17 because my birthday's later, it's in December.
I got you.
Like I went to college 17.
Oh wow. Okay.
Um, and even then I was like, I got a job and I didn't have a car and I was walking through like snowstorms to get to work because I was like, I'm not losing this job. I need to eat, I need to do these things. Um, and then eventually I got a car, but then at one point I was something happened, like the boyfriend that I had, and I ended up like staying in a apartment because we had apartments where I went to school with like 6, 7 men,
Mm,
including my boyfriend at the time, and none
mm,
of them had jobs. And then I was like taking care of them. So I've always been in like survival mode.
okay.
Um, almost always had my own apartment. Never had, I've never for a significant amount of time lived with someone that helped pay bills.
Oh wow.
So it's always been on me.
Right.
And I reached a place where everything was falling apart in my life. I was doing personal training and I've always been trying to be someone who is in control of my own fate. I hate working for other people. I have a side business as well. It's Pure Tifa, that's like holistic healing and things like that. Um, but before that, I was doing personal training because I'm always trying to like find my space where I fit in, where I can create a name for myself and a place for myself where I have the power and control. And everything was going well, and then it all just fell apart. And I was like waiting and waiting for like my tax money to come back, right? Like, oh, when I get this tax money, I know how much I normally get. My stepdad does them. I got nothing. Like it came back like $200, and I was expecting like 2 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed that money to pay rent. And my aunt bailed me out. Like I had like an emotional break. I broke, my aunt bailed me out. And I thought like this, I was 25. No, I was 26. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't be the person that my family bails out anymore. I have to find a way that if something happens in my life, no matter what, I'm taking care of. Because like, yes, I'm so fortunate that they bailed me out, but they weren't like paying my bills, monthly, right? It was like an emergent situation. And I was like, not everybody has these opportunities for someone to bail them out. And I'm struggling and blessed at the same time. It's a weird place to be in. And so I sat down and I thought of like, what's the one way that I can make sure that I'm always taken care of? And unfortunately, that was the military. And not unfortunately, um, I don't ever think that I will be what is stereotypical for military. I just don't think that I am that. But I do think that in a sense, joining helped to put my life in new perspective and the way that it was needing to go.
Okay.
I'm a completely different person, thankfully, because of the military.
Okay. That's good. That's good. That's good. And then the story, a lot of what you mentioned in this and that
Mhm.
answer has been mentioned before. How would you answer the question you presented? At what point, to what lengths do you give of yourself for the next, for those people, that you care about? Like, when do you set that boundary? How, to some extent too, but when, what is it like? Do you have an answer for that question?
Um, I would say to tie it into my books for a second, because the joke is also that the Olympic War is like military based
Ah,
a
okay.
little bit in a sense. And so things are explored through there as well. And the same concept, like how much of yourself do you give? And in Olympic War, the character gives everything.
Mm,
Everything. And in Carry Me Home, that concept in a completely different way. Like the themes are similar, but they're presented way differently.
yeah.
The concept is then evaluated again in a completely different sphere. And I don't think that it has the best answer in Carry Me Home either. I think in Carry Me Home, the answer became when it is severely detrimental to yourself, that your mental space is compromised. Um, but I think that the answer is how much of yourself do you give to other people is more of I try to think of it as an equation. So this is like the sensitive, the emotional part of me, the logical part of me combining. I work on an equation where it's like whatever one thing I give to someone, I have to give three things to myself. But I'm also very cognizant of like how it starts to feel in your body, right? So for me now, um, when I start to give so much of myself to other people, I become resentful and I become
Mm-hmm.
angry and I become pissed off at every single thing that someone asks me to do or they ask me for help for. And so it's something that everybody else has to learn, but it's something that you kind of have to go through. I think the best way to say it is that it has to happen before it becomes like a red, like flashing light. Like we ignore the yellow. We think like the yellow, like, oh, okay, this is hard, but I can still go do it because this person needs me to. And actually, yellow is probably where we should be like, no, even if we feel selfish, even if we feel like that person's going to be angry at us or they'll judge us or whatever, when you reach yellow, yellow is a good time. Yellow means slow down.
Mm-hmm. Like, hey,
Yellow
can
means
you
slow
stop?
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, hey, you're getting a little too into this. Maybe you need to spend some time there because the truth is that in yellow, you're not giving that person the best version of you anyways. And in red, you're definitely not. And are you really helping at that point? In Carry Me Home, there's a topic that is explored that the main character Evanly and her mother Marie, Evanly's working so hard to save her mom. And her mom is like, who told you I wanted to be saved? Right? Like those two things. Like we're doing so much for this person that we actually not even ask them what do they really need.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's also another thing is to instead of just trying to like exhaust ourselves giving people all of us because that's what we think that they want, taking a second and be like, hey, actually, this is what's going on in your life. How can I support you in here, but in a way that I can still support myself?
Okay. Okay. I like that. I like that. So we have two books
Hmm.
out right this moment. One of them is it's in a series, one of four
Hmm.
books in the series. The second one was came about from you stepping away from that series and writing on a completely different topic, very near and dear to you. And the first one was too. We we want as many people to buy the book from whatever type. So I'm not trying to typecast,
Hmm.
but if you were, you know, okay, the type of person who would be interested in Olympic Warrior, you would want to go get Olympic Warrior if you or, and then you would want to get Carry Me Home if, how's one way we would answer that?
You would want Olympic War. Well, first of all, you would want both books if
Let's
you
talk about it.
like strong female characters. I write really strong female characters,
Nice.
but I write them in a different way than you would normally see them. So if you want to feel like the strength, but also the softness that can come with it, like my female characters are ready to like kick anybody's butt, but they cry, which you don't always see in books. You know, they
Yeah,
always like
one of
the
them.
right.
Yeah.
You would like Olympic War if you really like dystopian books. Obviously if you enjoyed books like The Hunger Games, I think there's a book out that's like a YA book called Powerless, Divergent. If you're looking for like a story that is adventurous but also gives you kind of like those love feels, it's always hard. It's always hard to try to describe your books, but if you're looking for something that's going to kind of like put you on the edge, but also potentially have healing aspects to it. Someone said that Olympic War was kind of really healing for them. But if you're looking for like a good, fun story that kind of really just takes you out, one of the compliments that I've gotten is that they really feel like they're inside of Olympic War. Like, oh, this could be a movie easily because you could feel it. Um, for Carry Me Home, I wrote it specifically. Originally it wasn't going to be magical realism, it was just going to be regular story. And as you know, as an author, you have to try to remain in a sphere, in a space, because then you get into like using different names, even though you're writing you know, you are the person that's writing the book, and I wanted to stay there. But I try to make that book for anyone who is going through something, anyone who's lost someone, anyone who has tried to save somebody from something that was out of their control. And for someone who always looked for or hoped that there was someone else there with them to help them. In both of the books, they also have like really strong male characters. I don't believe or subscribe to the belief that you have to be like, if you're an alpha female, you have to have like a beta male. I totally believe you can have like an alpha female and an alpha male together, and like the personality traits. We're not
Yeah,
getting
I understand.
talk versions of those, but like the personality traits, I actually think that those two go really well together. Um, when allowed to each be their own person. And so, because in both aspects, like in a more dominant male is always looking for someone that they can be a little bit softer with, and that can help them and take care of them. And the same for a more dominant female, they're looking for someone that they can be softer with. And so both of those things are in those books as well. So I think that if you enjoy a good story, Carry Me Home's gonna potentially make you cry. I cried writing it. But yeah, it's hard trying to describe my books. I think that people do it way better than I do, which is why I want more people to read them so that they could then describe them to other people for me.
Nice.
Because summarizing all of the feelings that you put into a book is really hard.
Yeah, and I get that. Yeah, no, definitely. Hope you're tracking, those testimonials. You know what I mean, and throw that back in the second edition or the third edition. Now you got them. Not necessarily a foreword, but something like that. Those are good, like self promotion. And all that. And I don't know, and this, if it's, this isn't something you. If it's something you already doing, cool, then maybe the person listening. But like, yeah, especially like what you have now is you already know you have one of the stories that's one of four. But like sometimes I might go back and give this person credit because it's not my idea. But like when you have a story, you now have an ebook, you now have what could one day be a movie, you now have a play, you've already mentioned, speaking and TED Talks. So it's like all of that is from that same book. So like, yes, as trying to make things happen, from the standpoint of basically the economical side of things, you're like, I gotta, push out, the next book and the next content. Sometimes we rush too fast what we can do with this one. Like this, this is not just how many books did it sell, on my website, but like there's so much more to it, and like really get, what I'm saying, everything out of it. Because again, this is not easy, and I think, and people really, need to be saluted for putting. And and if you want to speak on this too, I just saw something yesterday that was talking about like the state of our economy makes it, really puts a strain on creativity, on the arts. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have. It's unfortunate, but a blessing. Some of the most important people in my life, like right now, I'm in like what I call like a personship, because I'm poly,
Okay.
but I have like a person that I'm with. He's very practical, and my best friend is very practical, and they're both very like money oriented, and they're the two people that I probably talk to the most about things. And recently financial things have happened because I left my job. I didn't have anything for a couple of months, and it put like a very, financial strain. And I was like, I'll Carry Me Home is going to be this thing and it's going to blow up. And obviously it didn't, but it was like, Carry Me Home is going to be this thing and it's going to blow up and then everything's going to be great. And then it wasn't. And now I have a job where I have the time, I guess, but the strain on my creativity, I'm starting to notice it because I'm peopling a lot more now, and I don't have energy, even though I have the time to sit and write and to think and to do all those things. But it's hard because they're like, maybe you should like step away from promoting your book, or maybe you should step away, maybe not step away from writing, but step away from putting as much energy into it, because they are very practical. And I think financially.
Yeah.
And like that becomes really hard when like your dream is your dream.
Yeah.
And it's lovely and it's awesome. You see people like some of my favorite authors right now, like, yeah, my husband is so supportive, and and I'm like, that has to be amazing. And I'm not saying that my friends or whatever, they're not supportive, but um they're supportive in a different way. They don't understand this aspect. And because of the economy, everybody's in like survival mode.
Yeah.
And when you're in survival mode, which is where I think that like my body is now, and which is why it's kind of so hard for me to emote in a certain way, because when you're in survival mode, you don't have time to think creatively. Like you're just trying to get your bills paid, catch up on all these things, do all these things, and it is very straining, and people often forget just how important having a creative outlet can be and how important the arts are, because they're the thing that keeps us all going, right?
Oh
When
yeah.
we get home from our stressful day at work, that we're working because we need to pay bills, because groceries has raised and mortgage prices, rates have raised and all these things, the first thing you do is you go home and watch TV,
All right.
right? Or you
Mhm.
go home and play video games, or you go home and read a book,
All right.
because that's your release. And if you didn't have that, like, where would you be?
Yeah, we'd be the robots that they're trying to replace us with.
Right. But even those robots are being taught
Hmm.
creative. Like even AI is being taught not to just regurgitate like facts, but find a way to add flair and
Yes.
be creative with it, because that is important in all aspects. And without that, I think as a world, we would all probably go insane.
Yeah. More insane because we're already there.
Because we're already
We're doing a
crazy
great
right
job.
there.
Right.
But yeah, way more insane if we
Yeah.
didn't have those things. So I try to remind myself, like, and it's hard, but I always try to remind myself that, like, hey, um just keep like people may not see it yet. It's hard for people to see a vision when it's not tangible. It seems so far-fetched, but it's so important to not, like, for me, I rather struggle, and this is universe, I don't mean it this way, please struggle.
You
I'm
know.
for it. I would like my blessings, but I would rather struggle and get to follow my dreams, and that's something I had to come to terms with recently, than be completely like in a financial, like I'd rather be financially stable, but not be there and get to follow my dreams, than be like a millionaire
Mhm.
and be a robot and sad.
Right. Right. No, I get you. I get you. I understand. And hopefully universe does as well. And
You
applies
promised me, so like, come on now.
right. Absolutely. No, it's right. Like even that conversation just led to, you just mentioned briefly that that you are, practicing poly. You just spoke just on, mm, yeah, like philosophical, and just, bringing up, yeah, the importance of creativity. And I'm saying all this to say, like, clearly you are not a monolith, and clearly there's so many, again, like, I hear that, and that could be this topic and go so many places, but
Mhm.
I'm not going to. That's not my job.
Mhm.
You already have your own, means to continue to share, what you're thinking in TikTok. I I I'm gonna tell somebody else that has a podcast might be listening. Bring Blake on. Clearly, she's is a dope story. So I say all that to say, where can people? First of all, where can they get the book?
So the book is on Amazon.
Right.
It's actually why I don't know why
I
balloons are just
don't know either. I was like,
I have no idea. It's easier to look up Blake Gabrielle.
okay.
If you look up Blake Gabrielle, the books will come up immediately. If you look up the names, because they're not like high up in Amazon's list,
Right.
they'll be harder to find. So if you just go up on Blake Gabrielle, they're on Amazon. If you're like, I don't want to search through Amazon for it, I also have like a website, which is puretifa.com. And there's a Pure Tifa publishing part which has the links to the books on Amazon. Just because Amazon's easier to sell the books on for tax reasons,
Hmm.
because they handle all of like the
Right.
crazy state or whatever.
Right.
But it also has some audio versions of the first book that I've been working on. It also has like playlists that I have there. So that's where you can find the books. On like social media, I think it's Blake, like Blake underscore Gabrielle underscore on Instagram. And then I think it's Blake Books on TikTok.
Okay. Okay.
Obviously, like I said, my Facebook's just gone. Even though I wouldn't give anybody my Facebook anyways.
Right.
I really truly I am under the belief that when you become famous, you should delete your Facebook and your Twitter. Because you were too young and you said too many stupid things. Like everybody it becomes like warriors and they're sleuths and they go back to a tweet that you made in 2007 where you know where the world was completely different
By
and
the
you could
way.
say different things or
Right.
you didn't have the knowledge and education that adult you has now. So like maybe my Facebook not existing in this moment is a blessing. I'm very considering just deleting all my tweets. Not that I'm saying that I'm like a terrible person,
Yeah.
but we all have growth, and I'm very much not interested in having to defend myself for what 15-year-old me said, because 15-year-old me was terrible.
Right. I get it. I get it. Yeah, and I can hear, you know, like where your, you know, where your aspirations are. Like you're trying to be
Mhm.
you're planning to be at that level where people are going to go do that. So you're staying a step ahead. So I get it. No, it's not always. Sometimes, you know, sometimes it's just strategic and not, you know, I have something not criminal, but it's just strategic. Like I know I've seen what y'all do. You know what I'm saying? With the
You look for ways to like bring, you know, I see it on social media so much. You look for ways when someone is coming at a height or defending themselves or they're like climbing, you look for ways. They did it with Chrissy Teigen, right?
yeah.
And she was at like a low. I mean, she was still climbing, but she was at a low. She just lost. She had like a stillborn, and then all of a sudden somebody comes out and it's like, in 2010, you told me to kill myself, and everybody's like going crazy. And I was like, does nobody remember that in 2010 that was like an actual phrase?
Right.
That was what we were saying.
Right.
It was like a common term that we. And so, you know, or she bullied me, and I was like, yeah, but that was we're talking about like almost 20 years or like you know
Right.
10 15 years ago. And so I'm always trying to think of where you want to go and how and what's going to get you there. There's this amazing quote that says like if your present self feels like you want something so badly that you can feel it in your bone, you can feel it in your body, that means it's because your future self has it. And so in my mind, when I make decisions, not all decisions, but when I make decisions on like what I'm gonna do or, you know, what I'm gonna venture into, I'm always thinking about like, how will this affect what I'm trying to build? And do I care if it affects what I'm trying to build? You know, is this self-expression worth it or is it not? And so those are things that are kind of always in the back of my mind.
Mhm. Okay. I like that. I want to make sure, by the way, all the, you know, the links, social media, like I'll get that from you directly. It'll be in liner notes, everybody.
Cool.
And I definitely, you know, will encourage us follow Blake directly, get in tune with her content, support this art, you know, stay locked in for, you know, the rest that's going to continue to come. And I think I'm going to have to I think I'm just going to start making sure I say this every single time. Even if it's not directly financial, y'all, and it's not you specifically buying the book, the likes, the shares, the comments, the spreading, coming into a room of 50 people and saying, hey, y'all heard of, you know what I mean? Like sharing, you know, just being that person to bring this person's art into the consciousness the way that, you know, marketing is brought, you know, anybody else. It's so valuable. If
Yeah.
you know, if you really are rocking with this person and supporting this person, like the energy and the time is also important. And it'll bring the finances our way. You know what I mean? It'll find that right person, you know, that's been looking to invest, you know what I mean, you know, with the deep pockets. So please don't always just think either I buy the book or I'm, you know, I'm not. Like it's multiple ways to, you know, to keep these artists, to keep us moving along. So please continue to do that.
Yeah. And I also have it where it's like, if you ever have like a Kindle Unlimited, I have my books on Kindle Unlimited just so
Nice.
that I don't I don't believe in gatekeeping my art.
Yeah.
But I agree, like, yes, for anybody, for everything, I always tell people like you're one miracle, you're one share, you're one repost away. Like
Yeah.
at all times in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the scary and beautiful thing is that you're just like one break away at
Yeah.
every point in your life from getting there.
Yeah, yeah. I honestly, right. Even the point, or like, I really don't know anybody who just I put something out and now we actually almost there's an exception, but we almost all have like a no. There's a lot of stuff that that was put out probably better than the thing that went popular,
Right.
but you know what I mean. So it's like yeah, it is it's one it's not it's we keep putting we keep moving in our purpose and keep putting out what's true to us, and when it works out then they come back, what I mean, oh, I didn't even know you had like that. So you all the supporting audience and listeners and all that are very very important, in more ways than I think we give credit for on all sides. So I really, man, like I'm really just stopping because I'm sure there's something to do, right? Like this is a fantastic. I really like truly appreciate. Again, I don't, like I don't like. We got on Zoom, and that was my first time seeing you. Like,
Mhm.
it's just we had we had mutual, as far as again, I'm always looking for guests. You had a story to share. We came together and had what I absolutely enjoyed this conversation.
So much fun.
For sure. And I appreciate your time. And again, yeah, y'all who stuck with us part of it or all of this time, like, yeah, definitely. You see, it was a reason why you stayed on this conversation because, Blake has some, amazing art and perspective. So follow her, what I mean? Get in touch with what she's doing. So again, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the listening audience as always. And this has been another episode of the Smart Dumb Podcast. Y'all have a good one.